Good to see you, Congressman. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be back, Maria.
I want to begin on this Visa Waiver Program because we know that Miss Malik came to this country on this fiancé visa. What kind of vetting went through getting her here, allowing her into the country? Because clearly she just lied about where she lived, and it just went unnoticed.
Well, as we're finding out more about this, we had put together a task force weeks ago in the House with some of our top committee chairs that are involved in all the different aspects of Homeland Security and combating terrorism. And we came up with a number of items that have to be addressed legislatively. We started by passing a bill, very bipartisan, to require vetting with the Syrian refugee crisis. The FBI director even said they don't even know who's coming in, what are the backgrounds of some of the people. And ISIS said they want to infiltrate that program. Then we identified that there are real problems with the Visa Waiver Program. You have about 38 countries in the world that participate in this waiver program. There's some real loopholes that have been identified that we want to close up and say if you want to be a country that participates in that program, you're going to have to up your game in the kind of data you're tracking and the things you're doing, even missing passports where people don't track where a passport goes missing, and it happens thousands of times.
So, I mean, is it fair to say this woman received the kind of vetting that we're doing for the refugees, I guess is my point?
Can't tell you exactly on her case specifically, but we've identified that the Visa Waiver Program has serious loopholes. You just look at a lot of the Western countries that participate in this. We've seen numbers over 5,000 Westerners have been recruited by ISIS and have gone to some of the countries where they're recruiting and training people. We ought to be tracking folks that are part of that, and obviously making sure that the countries that do have this requiring things like biometric data to reduce the fraud that goes along with passports in some of the countries that participate in this program.
You're also working on mental health. Talk to us. I mean, obviously, we've been talking a lot about gun control on the heels of this atrocity in San Bernardino. What do you do in terms of the guns in this country? Talk to us about the answer to ending some of this violence, which has just been horrible.
It's real unfortunate that when you have any kind of incident, the president, the first thing he wants to do is talk about gun control. Before there were even facts coming in that this ultimately was related to terrorism, the president started talking about gun control. It shows how out of touch he is. The fact that he should be talking about terrorism. He should be laying out his plan to defeat ISIS, which the president hasn't even done. And so when you look at this, I mean, look, California's got some of the toughest gun control laws in the country. France has some of the toughest gun control laws in the world. So gun control, taking away the rights of law-abiding citizens, is not the answer to combating terrorism.
Right. Agreed. I mean, this hopefully tonight we'll hear from the president on combating what we're talking about, and that is terrorism and defeating ISIS. Lay out the next week for us. You've got a December 11th deadline. Talk to us about the priorities in terms of allocating capital to various federal agencies. What are the priorities?
Well, the funding of government expires December 11th, so we've been in negotiations for weeks now to try to come up with a bill that properly funds government and addresses a lot of the problems through different riders and other things that we've passed out of the House to rein in federal agencies, things that they're doing from everywhere from the EPA to the IRS that are killing jobs, that are making our country less competitive, to try to address those things as well, and also to increase defense spending. Look, the president has gutted our military over the last few years. It's a serious problem. Our generals are telling us that readiness is at issue when we're living in a dangerous world, and so we're actually reprioritizing defense as we're addressing some of these other problems.
Are you going to be able to get the votes that you need, given the fact that the funding of Planned Parenthood is going to be in the way to get the necessary votes?
Our members have been engaged in this for weeks now. We've been having, obviously, we passed a lot of bills that address the problems that we're negotiating to try to get into this final bill called an omnibus spending bill. But our members have been engaged in this. We've had meetings with our lead appropriations committee members, as well as our rank and file members who have real interest in addressing a whole array of problems as we're negotiating the final details of this bill.
I'm glad you mentioned the regulatory environment, because I think that's what business is focused on in terms of the EPA, Obamacare, as really a detriment in terms of a barrier for creating jobs.
Yeah, and people are figuring this out too. It's not just businesses. If you look at some of the latest proposals by the EPA on power plants, it would cause roughly a 15% increase in people's household electricity bills. So your lower and middle class families are the ones that are going to be hit the hardest by a lot of these regulations. They don't have any real benefit to consumers. It's just something that some radical environmentalists say they want to come up with proposals at the EPA. The EPA puts it out there, and it's going to cost 15% increase in your household electricity bill. Families should be able to spend that money buying more holiday presents during Christmas, not having to send more money to unelected bureaucrats in Washington.
Having said all of that, do you think we'll see a government shutdown?
I don't think we will. I mean, we out again how to address these problems while properly funding government, while increasing our national defense at a time when the country, American families want to see these things addressed. They want to see our defense bulked up. And the president needs to lay this out. Maybe he touches on this tonight, but I don't think the president's done an adequate job of laying out how he's going to combat ISIS and the real threat of terrorism coming into America.
Well, people certainly want answers today. Congressman, good to have you on the program.
Great to be back.
Thanks so much. Congressman Steve Scalise there.